What's up, internet? My name's Ori. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button. You like this video, hit that like button, hit that notification bell. You'll never miss a video. You'll never miss a stream. Today is Monday, August 15th. It's day 41 inside the Big Brother house. And oh Lord, do we have an update for you today. If you only watch one update in this entire season from me, this is the one you want to watch. So let's kind of just do a quick little rundown of what happened in the episode. The wall competition happened, and then there was some back and forth on whether or not Monte should be a pawn. And then, well, Indy and Terrance went up on the block. There, it's done. It's over with. Now we can move on from the episode and get into the good stuff, because there is a lot to go over from the live feeds. Let's start early in the morning. Even before that, let's go and flash back to last night and yesterday's update. Where we kind of ended was there was a push for Alyssa to be the replacement nominee. The only problem with this was they were going to have to convince Kyle to use the veto. And, well, we can all imagine there's plenty of reasons why Kyle wouldn't want to use the veto and send Alyssa home, well, to jury. And, well, things might have gotten just a little bit harder, literally, last night. So, this morning, Alyssa was in the bathroom with Turner, and she said, listen, you can't tell anybody, but we went all the way last night. They boinked Kyle and Alyssa in the have-not room on one of those pool floaties. Boinked. They went to Pound Town hard. She said, all in front of America. We didn't actually see it on the live feeds when it happened. They were merciful on us and didn't show us that on the live feeds. But that was kind of the big thing in the morning. It was like, okay, this is how we're starting the day. We're starting the day finding out that the showmans finally got it on. Okay, well, what else? What's the craziest thing that could happen after that, right? Nothing too much. Oh, just you wait. So Michael actually filled in Kyle that, hey, maybe Alyssa would be the replacement nominee if you use the veto. He was like, what? Wait, what? Why? What? I thought we were going with Indy. I thought Terrance was. What's going on here? Why is she the one that would be going up? What's happening? He went to Joseph about this, who kind of played into Kyle a little bit and was like, no, I don't think she's too dead set on it. Meanwhile, while they were having this conversation, the live feeds were on split cameras. It was on the Joseph and Kyle conversation. Another one was on Taylor alone in her HOH room, literally saying, I would be dumb not to take this shot at Alyssa. Oh, it just gets crazier from here. So Kyle and Joseph were having this conversation in the car room, that little side room, bedroom with the sliding glass door. And Indy kind of interrupted them, and she was like getting some weird vibes. She's like, why are you guys being weird? What's going on? He's like, oh, nothing. Can we just finish this and then we'll talk to you? Kyle eventually talked to her and was like, yeah, look, don't worry about it. Like, I'm still going to use the veto on you. Everything's fine. Don't worry. Meanwhile, he already has in his head, I'm not using that veto. It's not happening. Joseph then went up to Taylor and was kind of pushing for Alyssa, but also potentially for Jasmine. So one of the big things going into this week was, and we saw it on the episode as well, Taylor, all through the casting process, she said, was always about she wasn't going to send another black woman home. And Jasmine being the only other black woman left in the house, she doesn't feel comfortable putting her up on the block and sending her home. It's just not what she wants to do. And she said she would feel like a hypocrite and an idiot for doing it, which is understandable. I don't agree with that sentiment, right? I feel like you keep who you need to keep. You send home who you need to send home. This is a game for $750,000. Like, you play the win the game. That said, I also think Jasmine is a good person to drag along to the end, because if you get to the final two with her, you're going to win. But that was kind of her reasoning on why she didn't want to put her up. That led to some interesting dynamics here because, well, if she's not going to put Jasmine up, then she only really has 3 options. She's got Terrance, Indy, and Alyssa. And, well, now that the veto's being used, if she's not putting up Joseph, who originally volunteered to go on the block, now it's going to be Alyssa, and Alyssa would be the one to be sent to jury. So this is giving Kyle a lot to worry about. He does not want to use the veto at all at this point. Joseph actually went to explain to Taylor that, hey, you know that whole reasoning that you don't want to put Jasmine up? Well, she apparently was making fun of that. She heard about that, and she was like, that's stupid, right? I don't see color. So I was like, uh-oh, this might be a reason for Taylor to go back on that and say, well, yeah, let's get Jasmine out. But it still was like, well, you know what? I think Alyssa would be a good thing to go, right? She's kind of driving a wedge between the leftovers and Kyle. Kyle doesn't get to have many group discussions with us anymore because he feels like he has to leave. And it just kind of makes sense to get rid of that for Kyle, even for his game, because does he want to have to do it to her later if he wins HOH? And Monte brought up the idea. He's like, I kind of fear that, all right, well, if it's this hard this week, what about next week? And the week after that? And the week after that, when there is no other option, unless the only one, is he going to then say, if he wins HOH, I'm not going to put Alyssa up? So there was lots of kind of spinning from the leftovers of all of them trying to get their own points across and have their own agendas. Meanwhile, while all this was going on, Michael is stirring the pot on everything that Joseph is telling to Taylor, and he's telling differently to Kyle. So he's trying to drive a wedge between them. It was just wild all throughout the beginning of this day as everyone was kind of gathering the information. The whole time, Taylor and Kyle have not met yet. They haven't even had a conversation. This is just different people talking to each one of them, kind of agreeing with them when they talk to that person, but when they go to talk to the opposite side, will also agree with them. Nobody wants to take a definite stand on whether or not Alyssa should be the replacement nom and be voted out. So it was really just a hot mess, and this has continued to be kind of the HOH reign from hell for Taylor. It's had switching targets all throughout the week, different plans going on, and now it seems like it's causing everything to kind of fall apart in front of them. Now, Kyle did actually drop the idea to Michael that, hey, you know what, like, you, Brittany, and Taylor, you guys were kind of the last ones brought into the leftovers. Basically alluding to the Pound Alliance that is formed within the leftovers, which includes Monte, Kyle, Turner, and Joseph. So he was kind of dropping those hints to Michael, and Michael's not the type that would just be like, huh, what are you talking about? Michael's going to pick up on that kind of stuff. He's not going to let that go. This is going to stick with him. And they're continuing to kind of sow those seeds of dissension, especially Michael and Brittany, because they feel like if they can get the leftovers to need them in the final 7 and not the other people that aren't in the leftovers, it's great for them because they find themselves to be the swing vote in the middle of the alliance. So they're kind of loving everything that's going on. Meanwhile, while all that's going on, all this running around, different leftovers meeting with other leftovers, trying to get all the information, we had a whole nother drama situation unfold, BalloonGate. So what am I talking about here? Those of you might know, one of the other reasons that Taylor didn't want to put Jasmine on the block this week is it's her birthday. So her birthday is actually on Wednesday. She actually shares her birthday with her father, who sadly passed away a few months ago. She had this idea that she's like asking the diary room and production if she can have a balloon, like a happy birthday balloon that she can let go and release in the backyard, which is, you know, a nice sentiment. But Turner, not even really, I think, realizing the significance to Jasmine and just kind of saying it as off the top of his head, and he didn't think about what the ramifications were when he said it, said, well, have you thought that maybe the balloon will pop and a bird will eat it, and that's plastic being released into the environment and global warming and climate change, and maybe we could do something else? And this, while, yes, Turner has a point, probably not the best thing to say at that exact moment. And Jasmine took this very poorly. It was maybe the most awkward thing I've ever seen on the live feeds. And we've seen some awkward stuff happen in the Big Brother house. Everybody just kind of was sitting in the backyard. Jasmine was staring at Turner. And he said, well, I guess not. And then he leaves, kind of laughing at just how awkward the situation was, and him kind of realizing, like, probably shouldn't have said that. Meanwhile, Joseph, Michael, and Brittany are all just like, what did we just hear? What is happening right now? And Jasmine then storms off right after Turner leaves. She's all upset. Joseph has to go and kind of calm her down, but she was mad at him because she said he was laughing. He's like, no, I wasn't laughing. I was just covering my mouth because I was in shock. It was so awkward. And I don't think Turner meant it maliciously and to be mean. He was just kind of saying, yeah, that's Turner. He doesn't really know. He's a young kid. He doesn't know what's going on. Meanwhile, Turner's 22, Joseph's 25, so not that much of a difference, but hey, 25-year-old Joseph is supposed to be a much better version than 24-year-old Joseph. We all know this. But it was really, really a mess. And look, I understand why Jasmine would be upset by this. Her father just recently passed away. It was only really a few months ago before she entered the house, so it's not like it's a real long time. It's still a fresh wound to her, and the fact that they choose share a birthday and those kind of things can really complicate it. As someone who has gone through a similar situation and knows what kind of things that can do, especially around certain dates and holidays and special events that you would normally celebrate, that's when it's the most hard, and especially when you're inside that house. That said, Jasmine is not the one that really has a leg to stand on. Okay, actually, she doesn't actually have... She has one leg, but the other one's broken. But Turner also deserves a little credit here, too, because he doesn't really have the same kind of, and this is more a little bit of speculation on my part, because he has come out and said before that his childhood and his home life wasn't exactly the happiest. So I would imagine his relationship and his values on what kind of things are really important in that way might not line up with people who had a much different upbringing. So this is just kind of a situation where maybe I think Turner, just being Turner, right? Sometimes he just says things right off the top of his head. Maybe was being insensitive, but also maybe just didn't understand what kind of dynamic was really going on there. He did apologize to her. He said, look, I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have said it. He said maybe even what I should have done was ask you, like, hey, like, we're not even going to be outside on Wednesday. Like, have you thought of another alternative you might want to do? Like, how can we help you celebrate? Which definitely would have been a much better way to go about it. But that was a whole drama in its own, and that really was kind of a little bit of a filler in the between of the two chaotic events that happened inside the house today. So once that kind of finished up, we eventually did get Taylor and Kyle to actually meet up and talk. So Kyle and Taylor, they had their conversation and they talked about how, you know, what would be your reasoning for Alyssa to be going up? And she talks about how the comments that she made with the jealousy and her showing all this trust in her to pick her for the veto, telling her she wasn't going to put her up, saying she would throw the veto to her, only for her then to take the prize away from her in the competition. And Taylor wanted to make it very clear, like, it sounds petty. It really does. And don't get me wrong, if you just look at it on that aspect alone, it does seem like it would be very petty to just put somebody up because they took a prize from you in the veto competition. But there's more to it, right? It's the whole idea of her showing her all this trust, choosing her to play in the veto, which she wouldn't even be playing if it wasn't for Taylor. And the option was there to take the veto. She could have taken that. But instead, she chose to take the trip from Taylor and give her a punishment, which was obviously one where she would be connected to somebody for 48 hours. It was pretty clear that was the kind of punishment she was looking at. So why wouldn't she want to take that and just take Kyle along with her? She knew Kyle was still going to be playing as well, so he would be going for the veto. Kyle kind of blamed himself for her taking the prize, but I think that was more him trying to deflect for Alyssa in that case as well. And they kind of went back and forth on why Kyle thinks it's a good idea, why Taylor thinks it's a good idea, what are the reasonings for it. And a big thing for Taylor was just the idea of this is like the most anybody's had to be able to say they want to put Alyssa up. And Kyle's point was, well, she's not in the 7. That should be reason enough. But then a counterpoint to him, which this wasn't anything that Taylor or anybody of the leftovers brought up. Well, okay, well, if she's not in the 7, why does it matter if she goes this week or next week? Why not just send her home this week, where you can then claim no fault and that you thought Monte was going to be the one that was being backdoored, and then Taylor went rogue. You could let Taylor take all the heat for this, which Taylor actually did say. She's like, look, I can take the heat for this, where you can say, I thought she was going to backdoor Monte, I didn't know, and you used a veto, and it gives him an out, right? It saves face with Indy and Terrance, because he would have used the veto, and in their mind, they would have assumed it was going to be Monte, just like he did, but in reality, they all knew it was going to be Alyssa. And his idea is just morally for him, he tried to compare it to her situation with Jasmine, which a little bit isn't comparable because, well, let me see. Taylor hasn't boinked Jasmine. Pretty simple. It's pretty simple there. The sad part about all this is it doesn't do anything to dispel the things that Kyle was saying a few weeks ago about there being some kind of cookout 2.0 going on, which again is a silly thing to really think about when you think about all the nominees and who actually left this season. Well, a lot of the nominees have been people of color, and a lot of the people who went home were people of color. In fact, before Daniel went home last week, the last 2 evictees were women of color. So it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. But they kind of came to terms with it, and they were eventually joined by Monte. Turner eventually joined them in the HOH room as well, and they were kind of just talking around the scenarios. Kyle was doing his whole spiel about his, like, well, I mean, do we really have to send, like, why is it got to be Alyssa? Like, she's not really a threat. Indy did better in the wall competition. She did better in the balance beam competition. Their counterpoint to that was, well, in the veto competition, which we'll see on Wednesday's episode, apparently Indy, like, just folded under pressure. Like, she had no composure during the comp, where Alyssa did. So that was kind of the counterpoint to that. Also, they feel like she's such a big social threat, and that can be something that really is going to affect them down the line, because if it's this hard now, how hard will it be in the future to get rid of her? And it was a lot of kind of just back and forth, and eventually Taylor was like, look, I'm not trying to force anything. That was one thing Taylor wanted to be very clear about. She's like, I don't want you to feel like we're forcing you into decision. That's not what we as a leftover are about. We're all here to make a group decision and what the group consensus is. And that's where some things started to get a little hairy too, because as Taylor and Kyle started to compare notes a little bit, they started to realize that people were telling them different things. Taylor kind of made it seem like, well, I think that's just them being kind of impartial and unbiased, listening to both sides, and when they're with us, they kind of agree with what we're saying, and they can see that we both have points in this, so they're not trying not to be, you know, biased towards any side or the other. And I think everybody's really kind of indifferent to it, but also is, you know, okay with it as well. Like, they don't really care. So Kyle's like, well, if nobody cares and it's kind of something that I care about and I don't feel good, you know, it's kind of the same as you and Jasmine. But again, Taylor hasn't boinked Jasmine. That's not a thing. So they kind of ended with, you know, all right, you know, we understand, you know, you don't want to do this. That's fine. If you're okay with taking the heat. And he's like, oh, yeah, I don't care. He's like, do you think I'm getting their jury votes? Like, not a chance am I doing that. So eventually they were kind of broken up when some other people joined them. I believe it was Indy and Alyssa joined in there. So they kind of broke. Oh, that's not when they broke up, actually. They broke up because Jasmine came up and she was going to talk to Taylor about using the veto because word had started to spread that maybe Kyle wasn't going to use the veto. So she wanted to get up there and try and convince Taylor to use the veto. They didn't actually even get into that conversation because Jasmine's birthday stuff showed up. They got a bunch of alcohol, some cake mix, party hats, no balloon. There was no balloon. And while that was happening, that kind of broke up what their eventual conversation was going to be. That then led to the leftovers minus Kyle going up to the HOH room afterwards. And, well, while that was happening, Kyle was in the backyard telling Indy, hey, like, I don't know if I feel comfortable using the veto anymore, while he was already telling her that he would use the veto on her. He says, like, I'll use it, but I'm scared that Alyssa is getting heat from the competition, and with what, is going on, like, I have this fear that Taylor's going to put her up, so he was kind of wavering and laying those seeds that he might actually do it. So, Kyle, what happened to you being okay with taking the heat and fully understanding that? Because it seems to me like you're throwing Taylor under the bus now. That's what it seems like to me. I'm just putting it out there. You said one thing, now you're doing another. Again, this is Big Brother, but it feels like a really sloppy play in a position where he already is kind of putting some cracks into the leftovers already. So that happened, and that would have been fine, right, if he just left those little seeds. But immediately, Indy goes up to the HOH room and starts talking with Taylor. And she says, why does Kyle not want to use the veto? And Taylor's like, what do you mean he doesn't want to use the veto? I have a target. I need the veto to be used or my HOH reign is ruined. Like, I have a target that I want to go up and it'll be easy. And she's like, yeah, but he seems like he's scared. He thinks Alyssa's going to go up. And he's like, why does he think Alyssa's going up? Has Alyssa said something to you? No. And Jasmine actually joined this conversation, and she's like, Jasmine, has Alyssa said anything to you where she fears like she's going to be going home? Jasmine's like, no, like I don't know what that would mean. Eventually, Alyssa joins, and Taylor's like, when did Kyle say this to you? Oh, like just before I came up. Really? Like, just before. Yeah, we were just outside. So, she's just finding out now that Kyle went and told Indy that he might not use the veto right after they had a conversation in the HOH room. This is maybe the messiest thing I've ever seen. This caused some more breakout conversations with different leftovers. Eventually, they all met around the pool table to continue to discuss the thoughts on the veto because it seemed like things were still not settled. And it was really kind of brazen where all of them were around the pool table outside. No one else around. I guess Indy, Jasmine, Terrance was asleep, which, by the way, Terrance hurt his back and Alyssa hurt her back from apparently working out with Monte. They were doing that really early in the morning. They were doing kind of like squats and power lifts and stuff like that. And both of them, I think, overdid it. Though with Alyssa's case, it might have been something else. Maybe a horizontal dance that she might have done on a pool float. That could have had something to do with her back not feeling great as well. But that was something they were both dealing with. So Terrance was off in his bed all day. So that was a thing. And that actually was part of the conversation they had around the pool table was they were like, Indy's said that if she gets voted out and has to go to jury, she's just going to go home. She's going to quit. She's not going to go to jury. And Kyle was like, that's so disrespectful. And, we should get her out because of that. And Taylor brought up the thing. She's like, well, if somebody wants to go, you keep them. And Terrance also wants to go. So you keep him too, right? Drag him along. why not send Alyssa out, right? If Alyssa still wants to play and Alyssa wants to be here, why not do that? Kyle keeps bringing up this idea too, where they're like, I don't know why you guys think she's going to be a big target and she's smart. Like, she blew up the other side of the house. She blew up the Girls Alliance. She blew up the old school alliance. If it wasn't for that information, we never would have formed the cookout, which is, partially true. Or not cookout, but the leftovers. We wouldn't have formed the leftovers, which again is partly true, but also he likes to try and embellish his role in starting the leftovers and downplaying all the other people who were involved in getting that to form. And this was just a wild day, back and forth. We finally came to a consensus, it seems, that the veto's not going to be used. Obviously, Kyle, it doesn't matter at this point what they say to Kyle. He's not using that thing. He's just not. It's not going to happen. And it would be Indy who is sent home to leave to jury. But again, she might go to jury, but she also might just go home. So that'll be interesting to see how that'll kind of works out. Taylor did have a funny little conversation with Brittany where she said, like, I mean, maybe I just tell him that I'm going to put Jasmine up and then put Alyssa up anyway. which would be pretty funny to watch that happen as well. But yeah, this was an absolute wild day of feeds. There's something about this season where every time we think, all right, like, this season's not turning out that great, or it's getting boring, or something happens, boom, this happens, and then it's a whole new game and all new entertainment. And especially with all of this happening right before this new twist coming next week on Thursday, the house is going to be split into 5 people on one side, 5 people on another, no contact with each other, how these groups are going to be broken up, what the divides are going to be like. Kyle, Brittany, and Michael seem to be kind of forming tighter and tighter with the Outsiders Alliance, but also I think Brittany and Michael are very much still trying to play the middle of this whole thing and make themselves feel valuable to each side of the leftovers so that they need them to be that swing vote. And then Kyle believes on the other side you got Taylor, Monte, and Joseph as a tight 3. And he's like, man, it's so going to be so hard going forward because they got such, strong opinions on everything. That how are we going to compete with that? And he's like, we're the silent minority. Very poor choice of words. That was actually kind of a slogan for, a big dumb guy who was in charge of a country for a while here, and it was a whole thing. So very poor choice of words on that one as well. But what a wild day of feeds we had. Unbelievable. I have no clue how they're going to fit all of that in on Wednesday's episode. I have a feeling like maybe there might be like a cliffhanger and they'll add that in on the Thursday's episode since it's a 2-hour one anyway, but maybe not because that one's already going to be pretty packed full of stuff. We're going to see how this all plays out. But again, this is just for Monday, right? Like, the veto ceremony hasn't even happened yet. We still have to wait for the veto ceremony to happen today, and who knows what could happen this morning. At this point, I would not be shocked by anything happening inside that house. These people are playing so messy right now. It's fantastic, and it's leading into one of the best twists that I think we're going to have seen in Big Brother in a really long time. I'm really excited to see how this all plays out. Even if it ends up being terrible, it's just going to be fascinating to see how this all works out. Could you imagine a scenario? Kyle doesn't use the veto. Alyssa doesn't go up on the block. They send Indy to jury. She ends up leaving and going home. And then during the split of the two houses, Alyssa ends up on one side, Kyle ends up on another, and at least one of them goes home. They wouldn't get a chance to say goodbye to each other. That would be kind of amazing. And at this point, I think if they are split and you have a majority of the leftovers, let's say Taylor and Joseph and maybe one other person, they can kind of convince them to kind of go against Kyle or Alyssa. Let's say they have a Jasmine or a Terrance in their side with them. It's going to be really fascinating to see how this all plays out and what happens going forward. But at this moment, it seems like the veto will not be used. I don't see any way that Kyle's going to use it now that he's gotten it in. Terrance actually, for once, Terrance had a very good pulse on the situation, and he said he's thinking with his wrong head, man. he's thinking with his Richard, and whew, that was maybe the first time in this game that I think Terrance has had an actual clue about what's going on inside this house. But let me know what you guys think in those comments down below of everything that went on during the live feeds yesterday. What do you think of the madness that was the feeds? What do you think of BalloonGate? Whose side do you really take with that one? I imagine a lot of you don't have much sympathy for Jasmine, but again, it was a tough release situation for her, and I'm always one of those, but you don't want to kick somebody when they're down, especially as someone who's gone through situations like that. I can understand her being upset by it, but I can also see how Turner was just saying something that he didn't realize was going to upset her, saying things at the wrong time, and I think we've all been there as well, where maybe we've slipped up and said something that we probably shouldn't have and hurt somebody's feelings unintentionally. So let me know what you guys all think in the comments down below. As always, if you are new here, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button if you like this video and you made it all the way to the end, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a video, you never miss a stream. Down in the description and in the pinned comment are going to be all the links for my different socials, including my Twitter, which I was actually live tweeting a lot of the action that went on in the house yesterday, so make sure you're following me to keep up with all that kind of stuff. My Twitch over at twitch.tv/OrioStreams, you can follow me there as well. We're going to be getting that up and rolling this week, try and get everything back going. I think I'm going to try and do a stream tonight on Monday, so probably around 6 p.m. Eastern. We'll be chatting some BB, we'll talk about what happened in the veto ceremony, and also play a few games. I think I have a little surprise that I want to pull out, something that I think that would be kind of fun. Also, you can follow our Discord. You can join our Discord channel. We're kind of building a really nice community over there. We can all chat and kind of get to know each other more, and that's been a lot of fun over there as well. And as always, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.